Welcome everybody to the 2020 Vision event. This is a special event held for the Living Your Truth Sisterhood regarding looking back so that you can look forward. It's all great and fun and dandy to look ahead and be excited for the future. But if we don't look back as our sacred observer and allow ourselves to see where things were great and embrace our purpose and step forward living our truth, then we forget to celebrate our successes. If we don't look back in a sacred observer way to look where we misstepped, to look where we may have been able to shift a little bit and had a different outcome, which would have been in greater alignment with our purpose, our passions would stay higher. So it's really important to take some time and look back. We're going to take that time this morning to allow ourselves to really be that sacred observer and do this with non-judgment. This is not about looking back and saying, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't get this done. This is about looking back and saying, this happened. Life happened in my path, and I chose these avenues to move forward to. It took me away from my goal, but I was able to learn this and this. We're able to look back and say, oh my gosh, I got so much done. Because oftentimes, we're moving and growing and shaking and moving and allowing ourselves to live our truth. We forget how much we actually accomplished. And so this is really important to be able to look back and allow ourselves to be in a space of greater joy, be in a space of greater purpose and of greater passion. So as we go forward, in the Living Your Truth Sisterhood Facebook portal, I have posted the questionnaire that we're going to go through today, and I've also posted just kind of an overview of what this is so that we can move forward with great joy. All right, so you want to look at those so that we can be able to stay on track and on purpose. All right, so let's start. I'm going to, the way this is going to work today is really, I'm just walking you through this opportunity. At the end, we will be able to have some conversation about that if you so choose. But I'm going to walk you through the process of 2020 vision looking back. So the first thing I want to allow you to do is to say to yourself, you know what? I am, and step into your purpose. I am what? I am a person who awakens wisdom. That's me. When you step into the process of looking back with your purpose directly in front, it makes it easier so that you're not shooting all over yourself and you're not wishing that things had happened. The other thing that we want to look at is a deep understanding of time is not linear, right? So if you look back and you say, I should have done this and I didn't get that done, it's all good. It's all okay. Time is not linear. Time, past, future, present, all is mixed up into one moment that is now. It's now. It's now. It's now. It's quantum physics. If you look at a lot of different physicists, they're talking about this now. And so if you can remember that the past is the present is the future, and time is not linear, although our human self defines it as I did this, I did that, I want to do this, I want to do that. If you can step away from that concept and remember that time is not linear and that we can move forward and we can move back, it makes this process so much easier. So I have my favorite mug, and it's 11:11 somewhere, right? So right now it's 8:11, but it's 11:11 somewhere. Time is not linear, all right? So we are going to allow ourselves to be kind during this process to ourselves. We are going to listen to our soul's truth. Our soul's truth always speaks to us with kindness and compassion, right? So that's the first thing I want you to know is that as we start looking back, we want to do this with great love and compassion for ourselves. I've done this twice now. I've gone through this. I did it with myself, and then I did it with one of my private clients. And we went through the whole thing. I went through the whole thing. And the first time I did it, I kind of really shit it all over myself. And then when I went through it with my client, I was able to ease it up. So this is a process that you can do a few times over. Today, we are doing this looking at our being. And when I say being, it's capital B, capital E-ing. It's about who we are as a spiritual entity. How were we this year? How did we be this year? There are 12 different areas of life, everywhere from your spiritual path to your relationships, to your career, to your health, to your wealth. There are 12 different aspects of our lives, right? You can do this process with each specific aspect. And I recommend that you do that. You know, if there's a particular area in your life that you want to elevate in the year and decade to come, go back and do this process for the year and the past decade. If it's your career, where were you 10 years ago? Oh my gosh, that's a big, bold question, isn't it? And where are you today? Because if we do this with each of those life aspects, we step forward with greater passion. We understand what we want to do. What was your relationship like 10 years ago with your significant other compared to where it is now? What was it last year compared to what it is now? Comparisons are challenging because we go worse, better, right? It's not about worse or better. It's about what it was, where it is, and where you want to go, knowing that it's all wrapped up in this beautiful spiritual essence of who you are. All right? So we're going to do that before we go. If you have your vision board, if you have a vision board from last year, I want you to take it out and just put it in front of you. If you don't have one, that is okay too. Right? You're just going to imagine what that vision was a year ago for yourself. What was it when you stepped into 2019? What did you want this year to unfold? And I want you just to start looking at your vision board in your mind's eye, or if it's in front of you, and just look at the energy that's coming off the board. You know, for me, I'm looking at making an impact, living with purpose, beautiful flowers. And I'm remembering beautiful flowers that were gifted to me in September. Okay? I'm looking at this bull who's staring at this woman with these big, strong eyes, saying, "Are you doing all that you can do today?" And I stepped into that process of doing all that I could do, right? I'm looking at the energy of born to be bold. Where was I bold this year? Oh, okay. And I just want you to look at the energy coming off the board and see what feeling you stepped into this year that's on this board. What is that feeling you stepped into? What is the feeling of the board speaking to you? And how did you step into that feeling? I just want you to take that moment. If you don't have a vision board, if you didn't create one, just close your eyes and allow yourself to say, this year, it was a year of me to be, fill in the blank. This year, it was a year for me to be, and then scan the year forward and scan it back. Where were you that? Where were you that? Where were you that as the spring unfolded? Where were you during the summer equinox? Where are you being that right now? Feel that essence, feel that energy going forward and going backwards, okay? And see where that resonates for you. I'll give you a moment. Where did that energy come? How did it feel? And then I would like you to look at that energy, that feeling off of your vision board and scan the year and check in with yourself and say, where was I not that? Where did I not have that feeling and energy? And be the sacred observer and say, why? Why did that not happen? The universe puts things in our life that challenges us. Maybe it was a health issue. Maybe it was a career path change. Maybe it was a relationship shift and change. And you needed to retreat from that energy so that you could step forward. And it's all good. That's good. That's great. Remember, if you're here live and you need the questionnaire that we're going to go through, it's been put up in the Living Your Truth Sisterhood Facebook page, and you can take a look at that now. If you need to grab a journal and a pen, please go do so. Michelle Obama says, when it comes to making a decision, all you have to guide you with are your values, your vision, and the truth of who you are. When it comes to making a decision, all you have to guide you are your values, your vision, and the truth of who you are. And as we begin to look back upon the year, we made so many decisions. Think about the decisions you have to make each and every day. I have to get up, I have to go to the bathroom, I have to brush my teeth. Those are all decisions that we make each and every day. What clothes am I going to wear? What shoes am I going to put on? What am I going to eat? Those are all decisions, and we don't give ourselves credit for how many decisions we have to make every day. If you thought about all the decisions you had to make during any particular day, you would be very tired, right? Think about all the decisions and choices you were gifted with having to make and do this year. And how did you approach those? Did you approach them with your vision, your value? Were you reacting to things, or were you responding to things? Were you stepping away from your truth, or were you stepping into your truth? That's how we're going to start looking at these questions. So I'm going to ask, we're going to go through this. We're going through this together. I'm going to ask you the questions, and I want you to just to write down a few things. If you need to scan back through your calendar, absolutely do that. If you need to look at your vision board, do that. If you made a word of the year, you might want to put it on the top of what you're writing out, right? So that we can really embrace how much you did this past year, right? This is not about what missteps you had. This is about how you handled the missteps. This is about when you made a choice or a decision that took you out of alignment, how did you come back into alignment? And it's about deeply learning about yourself. Because we can't move forward into the next year or the decade until we know ourselves more. This is about learning who you are to a greater capacity, right? Okay, so let's start in. And I will give you a couple of minutes for each of these questions. And then I'll go on. That doesn't mean you can't come back to this at another sacred time, right? So if you have water, you might want to have water near you. If you need some fresh air to think about, you might want to have a fan or the ability to open a window and get fresh air in so that we clear our heads. If you want to have a candle lit so that you can embrace spirit and your soul, do that now. Okay? And just remember, this is all about being kind and compassionate to yourself. Okay, let's begin. Let's start with our wins. What accomplishments are you most proud of this year? Our wins. What accomplishments are you most proud of this year? Remember that we're looking at this from the aspect of how were you being this year? What accomplishments about your being, capital B, capital E, ING, are you most proud of this year? When you look at the accomplishments, look at them from the perspective of your purpose. So if your purpose is to shine light, where did you shine the most light? And it might have been in learning to drive. You may not have been a driver and you wanted to go out and share space and time with other people. And so learning to drive so you could shine your light would be a really large accomplishment. What accomplishments are you most proud of this year? Look at the spring, look at the summer, look at the fall, look at the winter. Remember, time is not linear, so you may start with accomplishments in September and go back to accomplishments in February because they may have stacked on each other in a very unique way. Challenges. What didn't go as well as you expected, desired, or wanted? Where did you not have the feeling of your purpose bubbling up in you? What didn't go as well as you expected? And then why do you think it didn't go well? And that's not about blaming. The why didn't you think it go well is not about blaming others or the universe. It's about looking at your values and your vision and your truth, and how did you not bring that forward? What didn't go well as expected, and why do you think it didn't go well? That's good. If you're here live and you have questions, pop them into the chat and I'll answer it. I want to have a clean audio because I'll be sharing this in a couple of different ways. We will go back, if you're here live, to answering any questions at the end. That's good. Okay. Let's move on here. Of course, you can go back and do this a little deeper. Let's go on to gratitude. What are you most grateful for this past year? What are you most grateful for? look at it in things that came to you, look at it as how you lived your truth. How are you most grateful for living your truth? What gratitude do you have for living your truth this year? Where did it show up that the law of attraction brought you something because you were living your truth? What are you grateful for this past year? That's good. Beautiful. Next, blessings. There is a difference between being grateful and feeling blessed. Being grateful is about being grateful for what you have. Feeling blessed is about having that gratitude for who you are and how you are able to walk this planet. I am grateful for heat in my house to warm me during the winter months. I am blessed to have a warm and caring family and life. There's a difference between gratitude and blessings. And once you answer this about what do you feel blessed to have in your life right now, I'm going to tell you why there's a difference. But answer that question first. What do you feel blessed to have in your life right now? Beautiful. Excellent. The reason that I have this in this particular way of gratitude and blessings is that they vibrate on a different emotional scale. When you feel grateful, you vibrate at a particular level. When you feel blessed, you vibrate at a higher level. All right. So when you feel grateful, you vibrate here at one level. When you feel blessed, you vibrate at a much higher level. And the reason is that most people, when they look at what they're grateful for, it is because I'm grateful that I have X because it means I don't have less. I'm grateful that I have a car because it means that I have a car and I can get from point A to B and I don't have to ride public transit, or I don't have to rely on Uber, or I don't have to rely on friends. I am grateful to have a loving companion in my life because it means I have a companion and I'm not alone. I am grateful for having a wonderful career because it means I am not doing something I don't love. I am grateful for insert these things. These are all examples that are coming from my private clients. I am grateful for because it really means that I have it versus not having it. How many of you have ever walked through an area and seen somebody who's homeless? And you go, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I'm not that. Okay? Or you've gone to visit somebody in a hospital and you say, I'm so grateful for my health because I'm not somebody in the hospital. Okay? So when you're grateful, there is an essence of I'm grateful for because I have it versus not having it. But when you feel blessed, it elevates and vibrates higher. So there's not this less than, and it's not a comparison. It's just a sense of being. And it's really important to understand that difference as you step from one space to another, even though time is timeless, right? As you step from 1 month to the next month, 1 day to the next day, 1 year to the next year, 1 decade to the next decade. It's really important to elevate yourself from this space of everybody in the world is talking about gratitude right now. Do a gratitude journal because it's going to make you feel better. And that's true. And I don't discount that. And you have to start there. You can't feel blessed without going through the scale of gratitude. Right? So go through that scale. If you're not feeling grateful, go write a gratitude journal. Look around and say, I'm grateful I have electricity. I'm grateful I have heat. I'm grateful I have great clients. I'm grateful that I have a vision. I'm grateful that my family's downstairs being quiet right now. I'm grateful for all those things, but I am blessed to be. And I'm able to get there because I've done the gratitude work. So when you go back and revisit your notes and you add to them, that's what I want you to start seeing, sensing, and feeling for yourself. Right? Okay, let's look at what fun, joy, adventure, and bliss did you have this last year? What fun, joy, adventure, or bliss did you have this year? What areas or activities of your life made you the happiest and the most joyful? In other words, what did you do that allowed you to be your true self? This can be from, I went swimming, and the day that I swam this summer, and oh my gosh, I just felt so free. You can write that down. I sat at a park and I watched kids play, and that brought me so much joy. My daughter brought a beautiful baby into this world, and it was just, I felt so blissful. I shifted careers. I stepped into something, doing something else. Or I elevated whom I'm serving in a profound way. And it just brings me so much joy. Or I went on a cruise and oh my gosh, the adventure of a lifetime. What areas, activities of your life made you the happiest? Flip through your calendar. You may have missed something. Flip through the calendar. Okay? What happened on May 15th? Look at your calendar. Look at May 15th right now. And what happened on May 15th? Oh my gosh, I bet you there was some sort of joy or adventure there, or around that date. The reason I say May 15th is that's my mom's birthday. And it also falls around Mother's Day. And those are the days that I awaken our lake house for the summer. And it brings me great joy to step into a space that she loved because I'm able to connect with her even though she's in the next realm, second realm from that, third realm from that at this point. I don't know which realm she's passed into on her choices on the other side, but it allows me to connect with her. It brings me great joy and bliss. And it's a little bit of an adventure. We don't know what critters we're going to find in that cottage after a long winter, right? But that is what I'm talking about when it's what activities made your life the happiest. And more important than that, how were you showing up during those times? So take a look at what brought you the most fun, joy, adventure, and bliss. And how were you showing up? What did you bring to those times? So we've looked at what fun, joy, adventure, and bliss did we receive this year? What activities brought us that? And more importantly, how were you showing up in them? And I'll tie this in after the next two questions, okay? So we have to look at the good, but we also have to look at the bad, right? The good, bad, and the ugly, right? So what areas of your life caused you to feel stressed and overwhelmed this year? That's the next piece. What areas of your life caused you to feel stressed and or overwhelmed this year? Take a look at the last month. Where did stress fit into your life, if at all? How about last February? A lot of people go through seasonal affective disorder. Did that show up and allow stress and overwhelm last winter? Were you working on a major project this year and you felt stressed or overwhelmed while you were working on it? Was there a death in the family? Did you move? Those are the high stress list in life, right? Those things that cause you the most stress and overwhelm is death, moving, career change, retirement, uh, a, a empty nester, or bringing in a new baby. Those are all pretty high stress things. Did those things happen over this last year? And what have you tolerated this past year? That's the next question. What have you tolerated this past year? And if you look at the items you put into the stress and overwhelm category, how did you tolerate them? I'll talk about that in a moment too. What did you put up with in your life? What did you put up with in your life? What did you tolerate? And looking at what stressed and overwhelmed you and what you were tolerating, how were you showing up during those times? How were you showing up during those times? How were you being? Were you living your truth? How were you being? What emotions were you experiencing? And how were you stepping forward? Were you stepping forward? How were you showing up? Or how were you not showing up during those times? That's good. So when we're looking at what fun, joy, and adventure and bliss did we have, and how were we showing up, and we contrast it to what was bringing us stress and overwhelm, and how were we tolerating that, and how are we showing up. I want you to juxtapose those two things for a moment. I want you to juxtapose how are you showing up when there was a lot of fun and adventure and joy and bliss in your life? And how are you showing up when there was stress and overwhelm and you were tolerating something? I want you to do this with love and compassion. Because 9.9 times out of 10, you were showing up very differently. 9.9 times out of 10, you were not living your truth when things were stressed and overwhelmed and when you were tolerating them. And here's the rub of that. Here's the rub. When things are hard and you show up as yourself, they become easier. I am not going to be the Pollyanna and tell you that, oh my goodness, life is beautiful and I'm going to fairy dust all over it all the time and you are going to have no challenges once you step through that spiritual portal. You're going to actually have more challenges when you step through that spiritual portal. When you go into personal growth and development, you are actually going to have more challenges because you start acting, behaving, and being very differently than the moguls in the world. And you sometimes get very judgmental about that. When you step through that spiritual portal and you look at the rest of the world doing what the rest of the world is doing, it gets really hard. But I'm telling you, once you open that door to the spiritual portal, there is no going back. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried. You cannot go back. But you can look at the challenges differently. You can put your whole being and your love and your light into those challenges and show up as your purpose, passionately living your truth. And those challenges do not become as stressful and do not become as overwhelming. And how do I know that? Because I've lived through it. I've lived through losing a dog to cancer in 3 days. I've lived through my big guy having a rollover on the highway and one of our dogs running off and finding her 10 days later, already having gone to the next realm. I've lived through being next to my dad in the ICU for 10 days, ventilated, and on the cusp of being into the next realm and then coming back to us. And each of those, while they've been hard and stressful going through them, when I show up as me, the spiritual me, it's so much easier. When I showed up during those times, and I did, when I was tolerating somebody else, or I wasn't speaking my truth, or I wasn't coming forward compassionately, they were hard. And I'm able to shift that now because of a lot of the tools that I have. But when you go back and look at this last year from the space of joy, adventure, bliss, how did I show up? Challenges, obstacles, how did I show up? You're able to correlate those. So the next question is, how did you live your purpose this year? How did you live your purpose this year? What did you do? When were you doing it that your purpose just shined through? Doing purpose work is very important, right? And in the Living Your Truth community, we've done purpose work. And if you need to review that, that's okay. This is a great time of year to review what is your purpose in life. You know, what were you brought down here to do and to be? And how did you live that this year? And how did you feel while you were living your purpose this year? How did you feel? How did that make you feel? Where on the scale of emotional IQ were you? You're doing great. I know this is not easy work, but by the end it's kind of fun work. You know? And we're kind of getting through the gunky part, and we're going to hit that, oh my gosh, this is great part at the end. So the next question is, how did you live your truth this year? Your purpose is different than your truth. Your purpose is, what were you brought down here to do and be and step forward as? And your truth is the expression of that in times all the time, right? It's the expression of your purpose. So how did you live your truth? My purpose is to awaken wisdom. How did I live my purpose this year? I did a deep dive and excavation into my own personal growth and development to awaken my purpose to help support others. Right? That's what I did. But how did I live that this year? I lived that by shifting my brand in my work. I lived that from elevating from one-to-one and small group coaching with Soul Wise Living to the Wise Living Institute, which has a platform of greater good in the world. That's how I lived that truth, by birthing that. So when I go back and I look at this, how did I live my truth this year? That's what I did. How did I feel about living my truth? That's the next question. How did you feel while living your truth this year? And I will tell you, if you answer that question as a sacred observer, looking at that process, there may be times where you didn't feel so good. When you live your purpose, you feel bright. I'm living my purpose. I'm in that being. When you live your truth, there may be times when the world wasn't answering you the way you thought you would have the world answer you, and certain things may have shown up for you. So look at how, when you were living your truth, how did you feel? You might have felt great, you might not have felt great. For me, during that birthing process of the Wise Living Institute, I kind of felt pretty yucky. I knew it was my truth. I was living it, but oh my gosh, the challenges I had doing that, the resistance. I felt a lot of resistance while I was trying to live that truth. I felt a lot of frustration. I felt a lot of impatience. But I felt good all at the same time. So really dive deep into this. How did you feel while living your truth this year? And the next question flows from that. How did you block yourself from living your truth? So when that resistance showed up, and I was feeling that as I was birthing the Wise Living Institute, what was I blocking, right? How did I block myself? Well, I procrastinated. I ate too much because I was stuffing some stuff down. I didn't do what I needed to do to get some things in alignment well. I wasn't able to enjoy other aspects during a particular period of that birthing process. And when you can't go out and be creative and release, you can get frustrated. You're not creative, you're blocking yourself. And what limits did you place upon yourself during this time of blocking your truth? What limits did you place upon yourself? What were you saying to yourself that you could not do when you were blocking your truth? Nice job. Good job. So you now have a document. It's not completed. We've got a couple more spots to go. But you now have a document that you can go back to and enhance when you have another opportunity to see from this sacred observer space some of your limiting beliefs. You can see how you were behaving and acting and doing when things weren't going so well. You have a document now that you can look at and very objectively say, that didn't go the way I wanted to because I wasn't embracing my truth. I was limiting myself. I was blocking myself. These fears were showing up. And that's okay. That's just being able to look at yourself from being that sacred observer point of view and not beat yourself up about it. But you also have a document where you can look at the last year objectively and say, this went really well. I really enjoyed doing that. And I showed up this way. And things went really well because I was being myself. I was being my truth. I was living my truth. I was living my purpose. This showed up and I was having fun. So years ago, when my big guy had been in that rollover accident and we were out searching for my Tarsi for 10 days, there was one point in time where I was out walking this beautiful old sand gravel pit, huge sandy gravel pit, with 5 or 6 volunteers who I didn't know from Adam. They just showed up to support me. And it was a beautiful sunny afternoon, fall, Indian summer afternoon, and I'm walking through this thing, and I should be really sad because I'm looking for my dog who's been lost. It's like 8 days into a 10-day journey of trying to find her, and I just felt loved. And I was able to send that love to everybody. When their anxiety and their stress was elevated, I was able to hold them in a sacred position of love. And we were able to really enjoy doing the grid pattern with the dog, right? We had a search and rescue dog. We were doing a grid pattern. I was just able to be in that moment who I was. And I can remember that moment as if it was yesterday. And while the circumstance was really sad and terrifying and upsetting, and Tarsi was my soul dog. I've had lots of dogs. Tarsi was my soul dog, right? Boom. And I wasn't in fear. I wasn't in angst. I wasn't in stress because I was showing up in my purpose, in my truth at that moment, doing what was important to do, was vital to do. I wasn't working with clients, which I love to do. I wasn't at the lake, which I love to do. I didn't have to be there. I could be in the middle of a really, really, really challenging moment and still find great joy as I was navigating through it. And when I went back, this was years ago. This was 6 years ago, 5 years ago. The little ones are 5, so it was 5 years ago. I can go back and do this work on that year and say, my gosh, over that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have been anxious and sad and distraught. But 5 years ago, I was able to do that because of the work I had done from year 10 to year 5. Right? And so looking back, I can say, that's what is important for me to bring to any challenging situation, any problem. And sometimes I do it really well, and sometimes I don't do it at all because I'm a human being, right? And I have to give myself that, that permission to be human and to make mistakes and to look back with a document like this that says, this is how I am when I show up as the person I'm meant to be. And this is how I am when I show up, not quite as I'm meant to be. And this is what happens in those circumstances. So you have a document about that, which is really great to go back to. Because here's the big rub. If I were doing this, and I've done this work with my business coach, and she says, well, how much money did you make last year? How much money did you make this year? How many clients did you serve last year? How many clients did you serve this year? How many blog posts did you put up last year? How many blog posts did you put up this year? And it's all very objective because it's nice in numbers. There are numbers all over the place, right? And I can be objective about it. But with personal growth and development and spiritual awakening, there are no numbers. There is no, I was a 2 and I was a 10, because we could do the scale. How did you feel? And we could do a scale, but it's still subjective. But now you have a document that allows you to see the subjectivity of this objectively. You're able to see the subjectivity of this objectively, and you're able to embrace the work that you've done over the last year, because we've all done work over the last year. And it brings you forward into the next year, learning that when I show up frustrated, upset, angry, I'm not serving my purpose. When I show up upset, angry, frustrated, I'm not being who I am. So by having done this work in this document, you can now objectively look at the subjective nature of personal growth and spiritual development. All right. So let's go forward. Right. You got just a couple more things to do, and then I'm going to open it up to questions and observations and ideas and ahas, and see if there's anything I can do to support you. I want you to take a look back. If you had a word for 2019, what was it? And how did it serve you this year? I want you now, as we did in the beginning, to look at your vision board and see what energy now comes off of it. Is it different than what we did at the beginning of the year? So take a look at that vision board. Again, if you don't have your vision board, that's okay. Just look at what your vision was in your mind's eye. If you didn't have a word of the year for 2019, that's okay. If there was a word for what you wanted 2019 to be, feel like, what would it have been now that we've done this work? So I want you to take a few moments and just look at these aspects and write down, how do you feel about your vision for the past year? Now that we've done the work of seeing how you weren't living your truth, where you weren't showing up as who you are meant to be, where you did find great joy and adventure and bliss, and how you were showing up and being at those particular times. I want you to go back through your calendar, back through your vision board, and say, how do you feel about your vision of the past year right now? If there was a course correction because of some of those circumstances that we reviewed that came about, that shifted your year. If there was a course correction about your vision, why did you take that course correction? And did you stand in your truth? So the example that I will give you is not this year, but last year, my father and it spent 4 weeks failing health, into ICU for 10 days. It happened really quickly. They had to put a new valve in him. And it was a very precarious surgery. And I spent that month focusing on him. I spent the next month focusing on his rehab. I course corrected because that was important to me. And I let a big training that I was hosting go. Kelly, yeah, thanks. The worksheets are in the Living Your Truth Sisterhood on the Facebook page. So I course corrected and it was okay. So was there something where your vision didn't come to fruition because you course corrected? And how do you feel about that course correction? How do you feel about that course correction? And how are you living your truth with that? So for me in 2018, when I made that course correction, I felt amazingly great, right? My business numbers sucked. I lost a couple of really important opportunities in business, but I felt really great because my purpose is to awaken wisdom. And I choose to put my family as that first priority. And I have built a life where I could do that. So I felt great about that this year. This year, or that 2018, 2019, where did I course correct? I rebranded my business. I had no intention of doing so. I intended to put a little fairy dust on Soul Wise Living. I intended to redo my website. I intended to maybe shift some of my offerings. The course correction was a full rebrand because as I was excavating what I needed to do in 2019 for the future, and I was pulling out of me what my purpose was at a deeper cellular level, it became very apparent that I needed to do a full rebrand. I course corrected. How do I feel about that now? Well, I'm giving myself like 18 thumbs up. Because I went in and did this particular 2020 vision, looking back to look ahead, I'm able to see that. Over the last week that I've done this for myself, and I went through it with a private client, it wasn't feeling so good. And then last night I went back through it again. And I was like, you know what, Laura? You've done all of this. You've done such a great job. You've created this better foundation for yourself and your family and for the people that you're going to serve. And I'm feeling really darn good today. But there were some things, as we talked about earlier, about those challenges, right? And those obstacles. It didn't feel so good as I was going through them. And if I stay in that place where I don't do this sacred observing of looking at what's going on from an outer field perspective and getting some insights and some helps from some really great friends, I would be going into 2020 without as much passion, without as much presence, without being who I am as much. And that's why this looking back is so vital before we go forward. Because I want to release those cords of everything that's on those pages about what I'm tolerating. I want to release those cords about what are on those pages about how I was showing up during times of stress and overwhelm. I want to do some releasing so I don't bring them into 2020, the next year, and certainly don't want to bring them into my next decade. So it's a great time of year to be doing this, looking back to looking ahead. You can do this each month. You can do this each moon cycle. You can do it each spring, each cycle of the seasons, right? You can do this for the spring cycle. You can do this for the fall cycle. Maybe not as boldly as this you're doing today, but you can do this review because it's so important to become that sacred observer. When we're in stress, when we're in overwhelm, seeing how we're showing up and stepping back and stepping in, showing up differently. All right? So, the last page we're going to take a look at, and then I'll open it up to conversation with everybody. Looking back now over the past year, what aspects of yourself will you choose to release? Looking back now over the year, what aspects of yourself will you choose to release? Those things that no longer serve you. That's good. In the Living Your Truth Sisterhood, last month we had a fire ceremony, right? How to create a fire ceremony for yourself. It's a whole piece of content in that curriculum. You can take these aspects of yourself and create a fire ceremony for yourself over the next, before the new year begins. You can just write them down on a piece of paper and put them in a fire, right? You can do a fire ceremony for that to help release that and cut the cords. And now, looking back over the year, what aspects of yourself will you choose to embrace going forward? What things served you that are your purpose, your truth, who you are, how you show up, will you bring forward with you? Put them in your back pocket so they're supporting you to move forward. You can literally think about taking these things and saying, my resilience really serves me, and I'm going to put that in my back pocket. I'm going to put it right into my spine so that I can stand tall in my truth and move forward. What aspects of you? Is it your love? Is it your compassion? Is it your truth? Is it your value? Is it that you're a healer? Is it that you, your gratitude? Is it your self-compassion? That really serves me. Mine doesn't. I need to embrace that more. But your self-compassion serves you to help support you moving forward. You can go deep into a meditation and envision yourself, do some creative visualization around those aspects that you want to help support you and embrace you and propel you forward, and do a creative visualization of how those are going to come with you. So I'm going to open it up to some conversation in a second, but I want to make sure that you are able to know that you can go back to this document. This is actually a soul document, a document about your spirit. It's about your spirit self and your human self. It's about your spirit self because you see when things are going really great, how you are being. And whether that's at a time of challenge or a time when you're just having great bliss and fun, how you are being, serving you moving forward. It's a great document that helps you see yourself as a sacred observer would. It's a great document to do with a friend because a friend will see you a little differently and you can say, huh, yep, that's true, and write that down. It's a great document if you are a coach to use in your coaching. It is a great document to allow yourself and the people that surround you see themselves as Source and Light does. Source sees me as a loving, kind, awakening wisdom person, right? Who has a little bit of sass, a little bit of resilience, a little bit of hesitation, a few fears. Source sees my fears. Right? Writing them down, you now get to see them. Source holds a sacred space for me to go through those things, but if I don't see them objectively, I am not going to move through them. This is that document for you. Right? So with your 2020 vision of looking back, you are now able to move forward. And with what we're going to be doing in the future, you are going to be able to be moving forward with greater capacity at living your truth and being the purposeful, passionate being that you are here in the world.